This violin sold at auction for £900,000. At the time, no piece of Titanic history had ever sold for more. Not for its sound, for the story carried with it. That it was found strapped to the body of a man pulled from the North Atlantic. There's a silver plate on it. It reads, "For Wallace, on the occasion of our engagement, from Maria." That's me. The night I died, the Titanic had 2 hours and 40 minutes left, and I spent much of that time playing this violin on her deck. Everyone asks why the band kept playing, but that isn't the question that stayed with me. The question is why, when the ship went under, this violin was still strapped to my body. The answer was engraved in silver. 6 hours earlier, the biggest problem in my life was a set list. We were 5 days into Titanic's first crossing, playing to passengers who had long stopped imagining anything could go wrong with her. 8 of us in the band, and me holding the baton. Hymns for that Sunday morning's church service, waltzes by night. That was the job, on the finest ship ever built. And it was my last season at sea. In June, I was getting married. Maria. 2 years engaged, a house waiting in Yorkshire, and in my cabin, a half-written letter that began, 5 days more. By evening, the cold came down like something falling. Passengers gave up on the promenade, the deck emptied. You could feel the ship in your teeth, 22 knots, and not a degree of it slowing. During the dinner set, a Marconi boy came through the saloon with a slip of paper for the bridge. I caught one word of it, upside down, between waltzes. Ice. The 6th warning that day, I'd learn later, though no one learned it that night. The ship did not slow down. A ship like that doesn't slow for weather. And that's all the sea was to us in 1912. Weather. The last set of the night, we played to a half-empty lounge. Brandy, cards, a few couples too happy to sleep. Between numbers, I heard 2 officers talking low by the doorway. One of them said he'd never crossed a sea so still, flat as a mill pond, no moon. Here's what I didn't know a calm sea means. You spot an iceberg at night by the white water breaking at its base. No waves, no white. No moon, no shine. The one night the Atlantic decided to lie perfectly still was the one night it held something in the dark. We finished after 11. I packed this violin into its case, said goodnight to the boys, and went below to finish a letter. 5 days more. At 11:40, I felt it. Not a crash, a grind. Long, low, somewhere under the floor, like a knuckle dragged the length of the hull. The water in my glass rippled and went still. Then came the thing worse than any noise. The engines stopped. That heartbeat I'd slept inside for 5 nights. Gone. A ship goes quiet like that, and every man aboard sits up in his bunk at the same time, listening. On deck, it looked like a joke. Passengers in fur coats over pyjamas, laughing steam. Some lads from steerage were kicking chunks of ice around the well deck. It had scraped off the berg and landed aboard like a delivery. "We've stopped for the night," someone said. The ship sat level as a ballroom, lit up stem to stern, warm as Christmas. Then I saw the postmen. 5 of them, hauling registered mail sacks up from below. 2 men to a sack, seawater running off the canvas, and their trousers dark to the knee. Mail doesn't get wet on an unsinkable ship. Nobody laughed on that staircase. A steward stopped me. He knew my face from the Sunday service. "Captain's orders, Mr. Hartley. Lifebelts on, dress warm." Outside the gymnasium, I heard an officer do the arithmetic under his breath, the way men pray. Boats for 1,100. Souls aboard 2,200. There's a kind of math you only do once, and it never stops doing itself in your head after that. And none of those boats was reserved for 8 musicians standing there with instruments in their hands. They found me by the staircase. "Mr. Hartley, get your men. Play. Keep them calm." What do you play for 2,000 people while the sea climbs the stairs beneath them? I'll tell you what we chose. Ragtime. The brightest, silliest, most alive music we had. We tuned to each other in the first-class lounge like it was a Tuesday rehearsal, and my hands were steady, and I don't know why. Because here is what panic actually looks like, at first. It doesn't scream. It stands very politely on a freezing deck, refusing to believe. I watched a lifeboat built for 65 drop toward the water, carrying 28, half empty, because no one could imagine this ship needing boats at all. Women wouldn't leave their husbands for a fairy tale about sinking. Then the first rocket went up. White. It cracked open above the funnels like a dying star. And in that light, I watched every upturned face on the boat deck age a year in 1 second. Rockets don't ask anything of the sea. They ask if anyone else is out there. We played louder. We moved out to the boat deck to be heard, and the cold took the feeling from my fingertips one at a time. Somewhere in the second hour, I set my case down, and it slid away from me, gently, like the ship was apologizing for the angle. Jock Hume stood on my left. Violin, 21 years old, a girl at home expecting his child. He played the whole night with his eyes shut, and he never once played wrong. And me, while my arms worked the waltzes, I was in a parlour in Yorkshire 2 years back, watching Maria hand me this violin with the silver plate she'd had engraved herself. The boys used to rid me about what a man should play if his ship ever went down, and I'd give them the same answer every time, like a joke. It stopped being a joke around 1 a.m. By then the ship's bow was low enough that the sea stopped being a sound and became a presence. Black, patient, absolutely still. There was a rush somewhere forward, shouting, and officers' warning shots cracking into the air over a crowded boat. The music was a thin skin over all of it. We stretched it as far as it would go. Near 2 a.m, the water reached the bridge windows and kept climbing, and the drowned lights kept burning under the surface. The ship glowed green beneath the sea, like something already belonging to it. The bow wasn't sinking anymore. It was pointing. Then I lifted my violin and gave the boys my old answer, the one I had always said I'd play if I ever found myself aboard a sinking ship. Nearer, my God, to thee. 8 men. No applause left to give. Others would remember a different song at the end. Perhaps they heard one. Perhaps memory changed in the freezing dark. The sea can keep what it heard. When the final notes died, I placed the violin inside its valise with hands I could barely feel. I strapped it across my chest and pulled the buckle tight. Once. Then again. I had no reason to believe either of us would reach the morning. But if the sea returned one thing to Maria, I wanted it to be this. At 2:18, every light on her went out at once. One blink, and then a blackness with 1,500 voices in it. At 2:20, the deck fell out from under the music. The sea gives some things back. 2 weeks later, a cable ship out of Halifax, called the Mackay Bennett, pulled body number 224 from the Atlantic. Fully dressed. The men on deck would say my music case was still strapped to my chest. They brought me home to Cone, my Lancashire mill town of 26,000, and 40,000 people came. They lined the streets, and at the graveside, a choir sang the hymn back to me, finished it properly. The violin outlived us all. That July, they placed it in Maria's hands, and she sent a telegram to Nova Scotia that still exists, word for word. I would be most grateful if you could convey my heartfelt thanks to all who have made possible the return of my late fiancée's violin. She never married. 27 years she kept it, and after she died, it passed quietly from hand to hand until it disappeared into an attic for half a century. When it resurfaced in 2006, it took investigators 7 years to prove what Maria never needed proving. In 2013, it sold for £900,000. Not for its sound, for the promise it kept. Look at the plate one more time. For Wallace, on the occasion of our engagement, from Maria. She asked me to come home to her. I couldn't, so I sent home the only part of me that could still sing.